All right, everybody, thank you very much for coming back and joining us for part 2 of Cyber for Hire, episode 15. In this segment, we are going to dive into a topic that we touched on right before the break, the impact of generative AI on cybersecurity. This is a segment that we're going to refer to here this week as the big idea in security. And obviously, this has financial implications, it has security implications, it has technical complexities. We've all experimented a little bit. We've asked it to answer interesting questions, write it in the form of a rap song, right? We've done our bit of exploring with this, but what I'm fascinated by at this point are the emerging use cases for good and for evil of generative AI in the business of cybersecurity. The hackers are getting much more quantity, much more quality, much more variety in terms of their really targeted spear phishing attacks and other threats that we are having to deal with. But at the same time, practitioners have tools to do more monitoring, to do more pattern recognition and things like that. So I see the pros and the cons. What I want to understand is, how will this change our jobs internally as well as the relationships that we have with our customers? So, Jason, if I can, I want to start with you.
Sure.
The impact of, pick your favorite one. I think ChatGPT has a little bit of an early lead on the Bard out there, but what are your thoughts on AI in cybersecurity?
So number one, I mean, where the defenders are going to find efficiencies leveraging AI, so will the malactors, right? So it's going to be almost like an arms race on, who can gain efficiencies and who can get the most use out of the tool itself. But we're starting to see, in a good vein, we're starting to see things like ChatGPT 4 be integrated into commercial product lines. I just spent this week attending Microsoft Secure, right? And they have their Copilot that's about to launch, which is backed by AI, right? It's their AI Copilot for security. Obviously, trust but verify. I need to use it, get my hands on it. But from what they're talking about, it's going to allow increased speed to detect, increased speed for research, increased speed for containment and automation, being able to have TTPs and IOCs at your fingertips for the SOC, right? So we can get that speed to containment. I think it's going to be a great tool to enhance. But like I said, it's trust but verify at this point. I saw a demo of Copilot, and one of the results that it gave was, please analyze all Windows 10 and Windows 9 machines. Well, Windows 9 doesn't exist. So obviously that's an erroneous response, right? So we know it needs to be fine-tuned. It is not perfect, but I believe it's a tool that's going to help us in the future.
See, I saw a headline that I thought was a pretty good encapsulation. ChatGPT is not going to replace you as a cybersecurity professional, but another cybersecurity professional using generative AI just might replace you because they'll be faster, because they will have more bandwidth, more scope and capacity. Jessica, as you're looking at this from, not just the technology point of view, but that practitioner's point of view, what are your thoughts about generative AI and how it impacts the good side and the bad side of cybersecurity?
I agree with both of you. Certainly, generative AI, such as ChatGPT, can make jobs a lot easier and can do things faster than humans can do them. And that's something that's going to give a boost to both sides. The in the arms race that you were mentioning, Jason. We have to be careful. I mean, the human factor, the human link in the whole thing is essential at this point, because there's still so much error in the results. You can't. One of the things I did, I gave ChatGPT a list of company names to alphabetize. You wouldn't think that would be that tough, but it couldn't get through the entire list. It stopped at P one time. It stopped at O one time. It never made it through the entire list. And I asked it to alphabetize a list and also tell me how many times each company name appeared on the list. Forget about it. Could not do it. So, I mean, it's just not there yet. It's just not there. You still need a human to be able to do these things. And I don't know if you guys saw, but there was an article in Bloomberg the other day about how generative AI prompt technicians, I think it was, were getting paid the job listings for them $335,000 a year for that job. If you can come up with the right queries for ChatGPT to get the right responses out of it, that's the paycheck you're going to get. So
see, as a person who owns many tools that could be used for home improvement, it does not mean that I am also good at home improvement. It means I really enjoy tools, right? I think having fancy tools is very, very fun. Using them occasionally is also very fun. Building you an heirloom quality piece of furniture, not in my repertoire, right?
Like Ryan's not building me a house anytime soon.
No, I am. You would not want to live in that house, Jason. It is, and see, I think that's where we're at with these tools as they emerge. We talk a lot about the bandwidth crush on the practitioner, right? The actual agent in the chair responsible for monitoring and responding to alerts. The number, just the raw quantities that we deal with, leading to an unfortunate level of burnout in the people already in our industry. But also, we don't have nearly enough people in our industry, right? We're all kind of, 600,000 here, 700,000 there. We all know we need more people. I think this could be, if we use it well, it could be a game leveler. We're not going to win the game because of ChatGPT, but an agent who's currently able to respond to, 100, 150 alerts in a shift and do it well and do the research and make sure that they are out there. If that person's bandwidth can double, well, then I don't need 600,000 extra humans. Maybe I only need 300,000 extra humans. It's not solving the problem, but it is giving us progress. And so I think that that's one of the hopeful things. But like we said, the bad guys are using it too. And Jason, from your perspective, as you're looking at it, where are you starting to see interesting / nightmare fuel things that are coming from ChatGPT from the malactors?
Sure. Just before we get into that, to tether into your last comment, in the military, we call it a force multiplier. And this is why I've called ChatGPT a tool since we started talking about this. It is a tool. In the military, you have tools, and those tools can be tanks, can be planes, can be weapons. They are force multipliers. Taking an existing force and being able to get better outcomes from that force, right? That's what this is going to be. Now, to that end, much like military, when you're in a war, the bad guys have force multipliers as well, right? So we have to be able to defend against those force multipliers. And just trends that I'm starting to see. I mean, the biggest one I'm starting to see right now is the quickness to social engineering, business email compromise, OSINT on targets, right? Open source intelligence gathering on targets, propaganda, created pretext from AI. So you have your vishing and your phishing made for you based on open source intelligence gathering that they can go out there and do, and it's funny that, it's pretty accurate on that side. Before I jumped on, Ryan, I actually asked ChatGPT to do some OSINT on you, right? And it told me that you were a principal consultant at Morris Management. It went through 20 years of experience in technology, right? Nice. So I had, and I just wanted to see what quick OSINT in 30 seconds it could pull on the public internet, knowing that it stops at 2021 about Ryan. I got about 500 words here that I could rip through if I wanted to, right? And I only asked it one question. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And now we're seeing, the next one is that multimodal AI for voice video. So deep fakes, right? So those type of things where you're getting vishing that sounds like my wife, right? I saw on the news, one of the nightly news shows, they did a whole thing about AI and the scam risks around it. And An example was a real life example of someone who got a call and they said, they were from the police department and they had their daughter detained. And it was quick snippets of the daughter's voice based on things that they found on the internet, right? And that, bail money, and here's where you can wire some bail money, and got hit with the scam, right? So it's those type of things that are going to be very dangerous. Now think about that in the context of a business. Hey, I'm the CFO. Wire me $150,000 right now. And it's the voice of the CFO calling the controller, right? Dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous. And it sounds like science fiction. It's literally here today. These are not future use cases, right? The things that you're talking about in the deepfake world, it used to require, great big graphics card and a great big CPU, and we needed some horsepower to create those kinds of things. Not anymore, right? You give me 90 seconds of audio and video of somebody and a laptop, and I can create something that could get that $150,000. That's frightening, and it completely changes our perspective. I don't know about you guys. The very first day that I spent in the world of cybersecurity, like way back when, we were focused on antivirus, right? And our marketing campaign was no more sneaker net. And what we meant by that was you didn't have to take the 3.5-inch floppy and install it in the workstation and then eject it and then walk to the next workstation and install it on the next one, because we could do it over a thing called a network, right? Like those were rocket science days. But I remember back then the comfort blanket that we were able to offer to the industry, because we had a massive quantity of humans who were all out there looking at the threats, and they were updating virus definitions and everything in real time. And you could get those updates daily or weekly, and you could put those definitions into your systems and feel like you were okay. That seems quaint to the point of almost embarrassing that was ever the way we did things in the industry, because to take that approach to this new AI world sounds like my boss. It's saying things about me that somebody who knows me would know. It's talking about a very standard business process. It's using inside terminology. It's very effective, and it's happening in rapid quantity. That does scare me a little bit, right? Like that's not something that I think we know yet how to solve. Maybe ChatGPT will teach us how to identify those things.
It's a balance, right? It's scary and exciting, because then on the other side, I say, now take that AI model, couple it with incredibly strong threat intelligence, right? I mean, again, I said I was on Microsoft Secure this week. 65 trillion data points a day that they're bringing in to the ecosystem, just because they have so many endpoints. 65 trillion data points a day. Take that AI, couple it with the threat intelligence. Now let's talk about what that's going to do for incident response. Identify ongoing attacks, access it, assess it at scale, give instructions on how to remediate or contain, the threat hunting side, proactive discovery of maybe an indicator of compromise of someone within the system before they've done harm. Just the ability to report on an event. I mean, the reporting feature of ChatGPT is pretty great. You can get it to spit you out some really good reports if you put in the right data. It's your data. Automation, leverage AI for attack disruption. Huge, right? So, there's that blessing and the curse that we're at right now. And it's figuring out that balance, because I can see some really good use cases, incredible use cases. And then now take the AI model, take the threat intelligence from the commercial, a huge commercial, threat intelligence feed, and now feed it your own internal data, so it knows your baseline, your personality as a business, right? Now couple all that together, and that's some huge intel that you can bring to the table. But now how do you secure that and make sure that, it's AI maybe scouring your internal data, but I don't want my internal data shared with you, Ryan. I don't want it shared with you, Jessica, so you can go use it in your AI model, right? So, that's my own, business's intel that I want to feed into the system, but I don't want it to go beyond my organization. I want it to be for us. So it's securing that information down. I want it for a positive use case for my business, but I don't want that information leaking out to other companies, out to the world.
Exactly. And Jessica, I'm interested in your point of view, not just from the channel and the cybersecurity point of view, but your recent depth of experience in the data and analytics world. The tools are advancing. The capabilities are interesting to the point of we missed an entire half a day of work because we got lost inside playing with ChatGPT, right? What do you see coming, and how do we need to be prepared for this new form of technology in our little corner of technology world?
Yeah, the growth of this has just been exponential. And I mean, I covered data and analytics and AI at Information Week for like 7 years. And the discussion then was, when's it going to arrive? It's not here yet. We can't scale AI in our businesses. And then more and more of the vendor companies started building the AI into their tools. And more data scientists started coming out of schools. There is also a shortage of data scientists and people who can work in that area of the technology industry. So that was a big stumbling block. It's exciting to see these generative models come out. They're from years and years of work. And the progress is going to continue to be at that speed now. It's exciting to see those changes happening, but also the data. What everyone says in the data space is garbage in, garbage out, right? And you're talking about I saw a headline the other day about companies putting in policies about loading their company information into ChatGPT. Don't do it. You're going to be exposing your company to all kinds of problems, but the temptation's there because if only ChatGPT knew about my company's own problems, it could give us better answers, right? There's also a potential, and I haven't seen this talked about very much yet, but for data poisoning attacks with artificial intelligence and machine learning, where the data that's input by bad actors, it's defective data. It's designed to make the results that ChatGPT spits out bad and wrong and to steer you in the wrong direction. And you can think back of that Microsoft experiment with the Twitter bot Tay, where so many it started spitting out racist responses because it was fed all those prompts by people who were trying to impact it. That I haven't heard about that happening yet with ChatGPT, but that's a really interesting thing that might be on the horizon sometime in the near future. I haven't heard too many data poisoning attacks, but there's certainly potential there for that.
Yeah, and Jessica, that's kind of why I hit on the propaganda side, right? Because if you can get activists or hacktivists to present enough content out there into the world, does it become truth, even though it's false? Right? Yeah. That's my fear. Right? So it's if you can generate enough
I'm afraid of that too. Okay.
That's why I touched on the propaganda side, because now you have nation states who have all the power in the world to distribute propaganda. And, and if they can get the populist to share it, tweet it, right? And get that information out there, eventually it may become truth in the world of AI, right? Of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And that concept used to take thousands of people many, many years, right? Like if we had the idea of, I would like to make everybody in the world believe a certain not true factoid, right? I could put it out there. I can get a lot of Twitter followers. I can multiply myself. I can get my friends to do it. I can leverage my network. I can take advantage of certain geometric math principles, right? Now all I need is AI, and that stuff works at lightning speed. One actor in one basement with one bad idea is now infinitely distributed, and that will not only put bad information out there, but these tools, we learned a long time ago that the software is only as intelligent as the inputs that it receives, and all it's doing is taking probabilities, right? Like, ultimately the algorithm for ChatGPT is a predictive algorithm of what the next most likely word in this phrase is based on the large language model, right? Quantity matters, right? So if I say the wrong thing more times than you say the right thing, then now mine's more popular, and therefore probability would dictate that the tool is more likely to spit out the wrong facts. That's exactly where you're going with this concept of data poisoning. I think we need to speed up, right? Like you mentioned the open letter, a couple of hundred leaders in the technology space. I made a comment on a podcast probably, I don't know, over a month ago now, where I said, okay, ChatGPT is here, and then we heard about Bard, and then we heard about all of the others that are coming from the other countries around the world. And my observation was we're no longer in the concept phase of technology development. We're in the arms race stage of worldwide distribution. And what happens, unfortunately, when we get to that stage is that people stop thinking about should we deploy a technology that can do this, and only whether we can do it. And we lose ethics, and we lose guardrails, and we lose correctness. All of those things just kind of go out because, you saw what happened to Google's stock when their tool at its unveiling gave an incorrect answer, and their market cap went down by $100 billion in a minute. It's like, okay, cool. They can't allow that to happen. They got to get out there with the next tool, and they're not the only ones. We have two tools domestically right now, right? I would argue in a year, we probably will have 200 commercially available, very substantial large language models that are competing for our attention. And I don't know that any of us has the brain power to keep up with all of that stuff. We need help from the tool itself to keep up with the tool. Very difficult, very difficult. So guys, out there in the audience, I would love to hear your feedback again. Cyber4Hire at cyberriskalliance.com. Send us your thoughts, send us your input. What do you think of the world of cybersecurity multiplied by generative AI? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How are you guys using it? I would love to hear some very interesting use cases out there. So send us in your thoughts, and we would love to share some of that on a future episode of our program. But in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is now move us to our next section. And this is where we go through a rapid fire exercise that we call the security detail. There are no shortage of headlines. There's always going to be more news than any of us can keep up with. So we want to provide a little bit of a public service by giving you our 2 cents on some of the killer headlines that are going on. So I'll put the first headline out there, and I'd love to get feedback from Jason and Jessica on this one. The first headline that we are pointing to is actually an article published on MSSP Alert. Companies are struggling to build and run effective programs to protect data from insider threats. Insider threats aren't new, but unfortunately, we're not keeping up with them. Jason,
but
what are your thoughts?
But often overlooked, right? I mean, some of the data that we have here is that insider incidents are costing, on average, organizations $16 million for an incident. That is an immense amount of money on average, right? And in this survey, 72% of companies say they have a program. But a lot of them are saying we still experienced year over year increases in data loss from insider threat. And not to say that it's malicious, some of it may be unintentional, but it's still insider data loss, right? And that was, it increased by 32%, I think the article said. So, we're doing something wrong. And one of the dichotomies that I noticed in the article is that there was part of the survey where they said, how often are you doing training for insider threat? Some organizations were doing monthly, some organizations were doing weekly. The folks who did weekly trainings were worse off than monthly. So now I sit back and I say, is that overload? Does it become noise? Are these trainings now check in the box compliance versus effective, right? So that was an interesting piece of the article, that it's not necessarily the more training you do, it's the quality of the training that's important. So monthly fared better than weekly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Jessica, your thoughts on this one? Insider threats, and we're not keeping up with them.
It makes me think back to that article we did about a month ago too on the Chinese spy ring. This was an MSSP onboarding a new client, trying to get their ERP in shape, and deployed some behavioral analysis tools in the network, and noticed some strange file transfers, and was able to identify, the behavior of the inside user, and identify that there was a problem there, and tell their client about this. I think there are some behavioral tools that can help identify such problems.
As we learned from the movie Scream, sometimes the call is coming from inside the house.
Right. So Ryan, I'll grab the next article. This is a very interesting article. Hackers can control smart devices using inaudible sound. So this is something called near ultrasound inaudible Trojan, where your home device, like I don't want to say it because it'll go off in my room, but your assistants that you have in your home can be controlled by inaudible sounds, right? So high-pitched sounds that you cannot hear can actually start controlling your device. Very interesting.
See, now I read this one and it legitimately gave me pause, right? I see so many things that go by, and most of the time you think, yep, heard it, seen it, somebody's working on it, I'm comfortable. This one freaked me out because, again, it's not a software fix. It's not a human fix. This is an actual hardware gear fix, right? It's a microphone that is not in line with the speaker on your device. And just like there are dog whistles literally in this world that the dog can hear and humans cannot, those kinds of things can be included in a video file from YouTube, in an audio file, in a music track, and they can be used to control your system, to launch apps on your device, to control your home, control your computer, et cetera, et cetera. This one is legitimately interesting from a technology point of view, but it's also very challenging. I read this one out loud to my wife last night. I was like, hey, by the way, here's a new one. And she literally said, can't have nice things. We can't have nice things in this
So
world.
true. I mean, Ryan, when I read this, I'm like, okay, so my kids running around dancing to these TikTok videos, those days are gone. Turn it down. Put some earbuds in.
Exactly. So, Jess, did you have a chance to look at this article?
I'm just listening to you describe it right now. Yeah, I mean, I have these devices all over my house, and have been comfortable with them. You guys remember when you asked me what scares me? You keep telling me more things that are scaring me.
Well, Jessica, they're embedded in these devices that we walk around with every day.
Yeah.
And by the way, when the vendor tells you it's not listening or recording until you say the trigger phrase, if you believe that, boy, do I have some real estate in Florida I would like to sell to you.
Yeah, whenever I do interviews with security professionals, I'm always checking to see if they have any of those devices in the background there, and taking my cues from that. But maybe that's not the best approach anymore. Maybe I should, yes.
Well, and to give you even more fear, we'll go to our next headline. Voice deepfakes are improving, and the folks at Gizmodo want to give us a step-by-step tutorial on how we can protect ourselves. As we were talking about earlier, Jason, the ability to create these things is here. It's not future tech. This is right now. What are your thoughts, and how do we protect ourselves?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a technology fix. At the end of the day, this is a human awareness fix. It's the same type of diligence, but I would say on a higher alert than your traditional scams that you need to keep out for. Your SMS scams, your phishing scams. But just know now that you can't always trust the audio or the video at this point. You have to look for the nuance. So, I honestly, at the end of the day, know my wife very well. We've been together for 20 years. If it doesn't sound right and something seems off, hang up the phone, double check it, call her back, right? If someone calls you, like I gave the example earlier, their daughter being in jail, you know what? What police department are you from? I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call you right back. Call the police department. It's that same double check, that diligence when something just doesn't feel right. Trust your gut, trust your intuition. And obviously, it's a lot of the normal things that we do to protect ourselves. Don't go wiring money to someone over the phone, right? When they're on the phone with you, do that check, do that diligence behind it.
Yep. Jessica, your thoughts on voice deepfakes?
Well, I was going to say, depending on how this podcast went today, this is a deep fake. If it went well, it's really me. But if I did badly, deep fake. Yeah, I can see how people can, when you're sitting at your desk and not paying attention to something, it's easy to be fooled by a moment of panic. And it happens to everyone. I remember at my last company, I clicked on the phishing message, and thankfully it was the test of how well I was paying attention, and I was sentenced to some more security training. So, it's good to be aware of these things. I just think any one of us can be vulnerable depending on the moment it catches us.
Absolutely. See, and I think the biggest fear for me in this situation, email is an artifice, right? It's an unnatural mode of communication that requires me to click a keyboard, open an application, download, et cetera, right? There's some artificial behavior that's going on. A telephone call from my spouse, that's totally normal. I'm going to be much less on my guard than I would be if I open an email. It's been drilled into my brain. Do not click on stuff, right?
Yeah,
I got that message.
I tie those things to the business, right? And let's think about a deep fake Zoom call. Right? So someone schedules a call, and it's a partner, and you think it's the partner, and it's really not the partner. Once it gets that good, it could be scary to that level, right? I mean, now I know the video is choppy and it's off and you can tell, but do you think those malactors creating these aren't going to progress? Of course they are.
Of course they are. And then they're going to include one of those inaudible sounds we just talked about in the previous headline.
That's right.
And it's going to be piped through your Zoom call, and now all your devices are in our control.
So Ryan, this last one, it was very interesting to me. Because I'm also a policy wonk when it comes to civics and government and things of that nature. License plate surveillance is coming to an HOA near you, and this is kind of this leans toward the autonomy of a homeowners association and kind of the power they have outside of the government, being considered a non-governmental agency or organization like an NGO, and the power that they have. Talk a little bit about how they partnered with these surveillance companies. Very interesting.
So I have a surprising level of understanding about this because I have worked for years with companies that build and sell technology to law enforcement, to parking enforcement, to university campuses, et cetera, right? Whether that is in-car technology, whether that is posted on a street lamp, whether that is just, mobile LPR. License plate recognition is a technology well established, well distributed out there in the world that allows law enforcement agencies to keep track of every single car that goes by a certain place. Sometimes it's fixed, right? You install it, you keep track of, for example, everybody that's going to Miami Beach for spring break, and you can tell if the same car is coming back around too often, and maybe that indicates some potential bad behavior. There are ways that they can use this technology predictively as well as for investigative purposes. When you take that out of the hands of law enforcement and our duly elected government officials, and you give it to that person who we all know, if you have an HOA, That's way more influential in your life than the president of the United States, right? These folks can affect where you put your garbage can, whether or not you can park in your own driveway, what you can paint your fence to look like. They have direct local influence. And now, hey, it's not too expensive to buy and deploy license plate recognition technology at the gate to the neighborhood, over there by the fence, around the swimming pool, anywhere they want to. This stuff is coming, and we all should not be surprised when you get an email that says, hey, I saw you were over here by the pool last Thursday. I wanted to understand what you were doing that late at night over by the pool. You think that's Big Brother watching? It's just technology.
That's right. And it's a slippery slope. I mean, I read this, and there's the companies who actually deploy the technology. And if you read deep into the article, they're actually building grant agreements with local law enforcement for these HOAs to deploy these technologies. So they're getting money to the HOA and saying, here, we're going to give you grant funding. But hey, by the way, you need to give access to the sheriff's department to be able to locate, review, download the video recordings, review them at will, anytime they want. And the HOAs are going, sure, free money. Let's get this. Yeah, let's go. And now now I start thinking about infringement of individual freedom, infringement of privacy, right? Those type of things, because what else can they be using this technology for besides just grabbing a license plate, right? So it's that slippery slope of legislation, and that slippery slope of commercial companies giving grant money, working with the government, influencing HOAs to now create something like this, higher levels of surveillance.
So, Jessica, did we scare you again?
Yes,
and
we
now
did.
you don't even want to leave your house?
I am afraid again. I used to be the president of an HOA. It was something that I inherited, and I would never do it again. No. But yeah, this reminds me also of the Ring doorbell controversies, where they are partnering with law enforcement. Also thinking about the facial recognition software and how many of the companies that created facial recognition software, including Facebook, they banned it at Facebook as well. But many of the companies that partnered with law enforcement have said, we are not going to partner with law enforcement on this anymore because there are too many dangerous uses of this right now. And we have to figure this out before we can go any further. So lots of bad uses by authorities can happen with these kinds of software and as well.
And that's why Civics isn't only at the ballot box, right? It's being involved in your community so you can influence decision makers in the government. And hey, by the way, show up to your HOA meetings, because guess what? There's this thing called voting at HOA meetings. You can influence your HOA to not do this and dig deeper into the grant process and what the grant means. If they're receiving free money, what are the caveats? What are the strings, right? Where is it overreaching?
Yep. See, and this is where I think it comes directly home to our audience. You are a security service provider. You do this stuff for a living, and you think cybersecurity is the scope of your expertise. Physical security is also in there, because physical security is no longer just monitoring cameras. It is infused with recognition and AI and machine learning, and it now has intelligence in video, in audio tracking, etc. You think it's only coming from the sheriff's department. No, it's coming from your HOA. It's coming from the school board. It's coming from anybody who has a couple of $1,000s and wants to deploy one of these on the fence on the edge of their own property. It's out there, and it's intelligent. You, as a service provider, need to be aware, A, whether or not these things are, to go back to one of Jason's early comments, do you know all the assets that are in your system? And are you aware of all the video cameras? That's a new layer that we need to be investigating, but also, what is it learning? What is it calculating? Who is receiving that information? Boy, if your clients do not have a policy around that, technology is interesting, but a lack of a policy is about to get somebody sued big time, and you don't want to be in the line of fire for something like that. So massive implications here. So that is unfortunately all the time that we have for today's program. Obviously, there is never going to be an end to all the headlines that go on in our business, and we want to make sure that we keep this stuff going. So for now, I'm going to sign off. My name again, Ryan Morris. I am your host today, joined by Jason Albuquerque and by Jessica C. Davis. And thank you guys very much for joining us. Thank you everybody for listening in. Please visit us at our show page. Please drop your thoughts to our inbox at cyberforhire@cyberriskalliance.com. And let's keep this conversation going on the next episode of Cyber for Hire, your inside source for cyber outsourcing.